Morena I te whānau. Morena, morena, morena. O ki te au, te tahi o aku. Hoa, ara pera. Ngā pera. Tēnā koe.
Morena.
Tēnā koe, koro te wā.
Ai, ko aua tu te wā peha nei hoa?
Ai, whai matunga au te taitokero nei.
Oh, rawe.
Ko hea koe e noho ana?
Kei te whakei o. Kei poneke nei au e noho ana.
No, tēnā koe.
Yeah, o, ka rawe te ki te i tō. Mata i tēnei ata, o horere pai au.
Ai, tāua, tāua. Mihi ana. Tēnā rā tātou. Just a reminder, if you don't mind, if you haven't already, please put your name in the your name tag, your name and your organisation. And if you want to go further, add it in the chat forum. Introduce yourself. Nai mai hoki mai. If you haven't already, you can also add in the chat what organisation, what part of the motu you're from. Let us know what the weather's like. Here at Te Taitokero, those that are from Te Taitokero, yeah, it's cloudy. The weather's not that good. Good to see you, Winnie. Tēnā koe whai, Winnie, hana koe. All the way from Tāmaki Makaurau, Te Piki Auahi. Ata Māori e Meg. So we'll give everyone about another 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes for everyone to join in. We've got a great turnout this morning. Everyone's in for the long haul. Good to see some beautiful smiles, Homa. We've got everyone's names. Please make sure you've got your name on your name tag. And if you can fit your organisation, if not, you can add it in the chat forum for those that have just joined in. Ka pai, we're ready to start. We'll start off with kahihiri ke tātou. Mānawa mai e te rangi e tūnei, mānawa mai e te papairaro nei, mānawa mai e ngā mākuru o te rangi o te whenua, ko tō manawa, ko tōku manawa ka whakairi ake ki runga kia tēnā, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kei aku nei, kei aku rahi, tēnā, a tātou kei aku whakateitei ki te rangi, tēnā koutou rarau mai ki tēnei wānanga e pūrangi. Ki te tūtui ngā kōrero, i ngā whakaaro, a tēnā, a tēnā, a tēnā. Ko te whakaaro nui ki ngā mate huhua o te motu, e mautonu ana i tēnā mea o te mate, ko te pōuri, ko te mamai, me te taimaha e pōkai kaha nei. Mea nei te rironga o kingi tūheitia, haere, whakangaro atu rā. Ka rewa, ko tāu tamāhine, te ariki nui, ngā waihono i te pō, tū mai koe, hei mata o te kōtahitanga. Whiri noa kia tātou, ngā waihotanga, ngā kiko, tēnā koutou katoa. As the host of Practice Foundation Online Forum, we welcome everyone who has joined us this morning for a 1.5 hour session. My name is Elizabeth Motu. I hail from Te Whanota, from Te Kaikōrero. I welcome you here this morning. We also have our team. We have Kelly, Penny, and Lee Ryan, who is over in the UK, might I say. They'll be in the background, who will be coordinating everything for smooth transitions. So, e mihi ana ki taku tīma, tēnā koutou. A special welcome to Dylan, who will be doing an illustration of today's wānanga, and we will share that in as a sneak peek at the end. So, e mihi ana ki a tātou katoa. Ki ngā taringa tapu o te kaupapa nei, nau mai, whakarongo mai, nau mai, hoki mai. Welcome back to all those who continually come back month after month to our sessions of Practice Foundation. And for those that are new on our session, welcome once, welcome twice, welcome 3 times. We hope that you enjoy the session today. What is our purpose? Our purpose today for Practice Foundation is we're going to explore concepts of value in approaching the evidencing, the measuring value relevant to social investment in Aotearoa. We'd like to firstly acknowledge Debbie Goodwin, those who know Debbie, who has been called onto jury service and won't be able to attend today. So Debbie from Materai and initiated this kōrero and was keen to support this conversation across the public sector, including with kaupapa Māori evaluators. We'd like to thank Debbie for all her work and to organise today's session. We're very grateful for Angie Tangere from Code Design Lab for stepping in. So tēnā koe e hoa. Our rhythm today, so for the 90-minute session, we will go through whakawhanaungatanga. We'll hear from our manuhiri, waiwai tapu, taringa tapu, from Atawhai, Tibble, Julian King, and Angie Tangere later in the session. We'll also hear from you about what resonates with you from their kōrero, and then time pending, we'll also open up some space for part-time and wider discussions as we close out our session. So heaps to cover here today at whānau. This could be a week-long wānanga if you really wanted to. So to borrow our whanaunga roimata, this will be, I guess, a pipi dive into the stuff that we will do today. So e mihi ana ki a tātou katoa. What we will do now, just to also mention, is the purpose of our Practice Foundation for those that are new, that haven't been here before, is that we provide a space for those working in the public sector who are working in a complex environments to come together with like-minded people We also want to acknowledge that it's a difficult time for many people, and we would like to encourage and support everyone to take good care of themselves and each other as they may, as much as they can. We hope you find coming together for today's session is restorative. So e mihi ana ki a tātou katoa. We also have Kelly, who will be in the background. If you have any questions, please send through any messages to Kelly, as she'll be able to help you out, or feel free to reach out to her. Tēnā rā tātou. For our whakawhanaungatanga, what we'll do is we'll break out into a whakawhanaungatanga for the next 10 minutes. And I'll ask that when you go into your breakout groups, is that you'll introduce yourselves. Today we're going to be exploring concepts of value and approaching the evidencing, the measuring value relevant to social investment in Aotearoa. So Kelly will place that in the message forum, but I want to know, what are your thoughts, feelings and experiences with this kaupapa, if you don't mind sharing that with us today. So I'll give you all 10 minutes to go into your breakout groups to share that today. O mai hoki mai e homa. Ko te mana konui I whakawhanaunga koutou ki a koutou anō. Ko tūhono koutou i a koutou anō. So no mai hoki mai. Welcome back. Here's hoping that everyone managed to connect really well with each other. What I'm going to ask now is for the next 9 to 10 minutes is, if you don't mind, we would really want to hear what your kōrero is in your own breakout groups. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections from your breakout session. Please take a moment to drop them all in the chat. If anyone wants to share anything with the Wairopu, just let us know. So I'll just give you a little bit of time. So if you can listen to music in the background while you do that, please do so. If you jumped online, if you just managed to jump online now, introduce yourself on the chat forum. Kia ora rā. If anyone's got anything juicy, or if anything was triggered in your breakout session, I'll leave the floor open for you to share that. If there's something that really triggered the whakaaro, your thoughts, please do share. We're all here to listen. Kia ora, Paul, I like yours. Would you like to add further to your kōrero, Paul, or are you happy with just that?
Kia ora. Sorry, my formatting went off there. I pressed enter thinking I was going to get another bullet, but it put the message in the chat and then I panicked. I think it was really around the definitions of value and the frustrations when you're trying to, we talked about storytelling and being able to show value in different ways, and how you measure value or how you measure success may not fall to the particular widget or the inputs that the assessor of value is looking for, and then it's just simply not seen. And so I was talking about an example where we were on behalf of Oranga Tamariki, on behalf of Eastern Bay of Plenty Alliance, trying to present to Treasury a holistic view of what this investment would mean for the region, and tell a story over a period of time. And the challenge for us was, if we couldn't put some things in terms of pure numbers, that value wasn't necessarily easily seen. So the challenge for us, particularly under this particular, our new coalition government, is to perhaps change the way in which we are framing things up. So that was some of our thoughts. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Paul. Awesome. Beautiful to hear. Tēnā rā koutou. What we'll do now is would like to introduce, we've actually got 3 Kaikōrero that would like to share their mātauranga today. So kei aku rahi kei aku rahi e ngā pētiki o te ki, Angie, Atawhai, koutou ko Julian, tēnā rā koutou ko haumai i wainganu i a tātou i te rangi nei. Hei Hei, kora i o koutou kōrero tuku I mo te hunga hia kai, mo tēnei kaupapa. So we have Angie Tangere, was born in Papakura and raised in South Auckland with a whakapapa to Ngāti Porou on her father's side and Pākehā from Taranaki on her mother's side. Angie is the kai tohu tangata whenua at Auckland Co-Design Lab. We also have our other two manuhiri, which is Atawhai Tibble, born descendant from Ngāti Porou, Te Whānau Wāpānui, Tūwhare Toa Whanganui and Raukawa, Te Tonga, who is a strategic policy advisor with the interest spanning the economics of Māori wellbeing and valuation of Māori language and culture and the measures of cultural capital. He is the kohautu at Banaros in Aotearoa. And thirdly, we have Julian, Dr. Julian King, tangata tiriti, specialises in evaluation and value for money. He has over 20 years consulting experience in evaluating policies and programs. He is the director of Julian King and Associates. So, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa, ka hua te rākau kōrero kia, koe e Ange, tēnā rā koe e hoa.
Tuatahi he mihi nui kia koe, e riri mo te karakia me te mihi o te ata, no reira tēnā koe, o tira e te iwi, tēnā koutou, nau mai haere mai, I Wanganui a tātou mo te kaupapa o te ata, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you so much, Didi, for the opening, and so great to see so many change makers on the line this morning. I'm really happy to be part of this conversation with Julian and Atawhai. Just a couple of opening comments from me, and then we'll go to the real experts. That's Julian and Atawhai. But just to say, e te whānau, this is not how to do social investment. This is more of a conversation about what are the opportunities and the challenges as we work through 2.0, a 2.0 version of social investment here in Aotearoa. So we're really looking forward to the conversation and your thoughts as well. We've got some questions to kōrero too. I'm really excited about this one. This one's something that we are really thinking about in our mahi at the lab and at TSI. So I'm going to throw it over to our other Kaikōrero, but the first question that we're interested in discussing is how do we determine value? Who gets to decide? What are the kinds of evidence that we can use to determine and measure different forms of value? So I'll tukua te rākau to our Kaikōrero to comment on that.
Kia ora, Angie. Do you want to point to me or Atawhai so to manage the process so we know who to go first?
I'd love to do that. The way the screens are, I can't even see you. So I'll go to Julian since you've unmuted, if that's Pai.
Kia ora koutou, great to be here. On the question of how do we determine value and who gets to decide, the starting point for me is to think about what is value, and what does this value thing actually mean? And in practical terms, value is about he tangata, right? Because things don't have value on their own. People put value on things. So value is what matters to people about something like a policy or a program or its impacts. And that means the only way that we're going to understand value is to engage with people. So no matter how we measure value, what we're trying to do is understand how something matters to people first. Over to you, Atawhai.
Hei, kia ora tātou. Ko te uti o te mihi, ko te mihi. Nā reira, riri, o tira Ange, tēnā kōrua. I like what you said before, Riri, about we're going to come here to collect pippies, not to dive for powers or coders. So in terms of really, really high level kōrero, I think if I see anything as really important, I think this is a dialogue about what's important at the community level, but also the commissioner or the government's going to want to know, hey, here's our view of what value is, and it's that dialogue, I think, that's going to be really, really important. Not this is what we think or this is what they think. It's how do we come up with a shared understanding. I think the other thing too, in terms of social investment, the reality is the word investment is used for a specific purpose. It's not just another kind of social word that we throw around to make a sound flash. There will be private capital and other kind of investors that want to come in and see some type of return on any capital they might put in. I think Penny before was talking about social bonds. So I think if you're interested in the space and you're an NGO or you're public service, you do need to understand these things. So I think Julian is right in terms of the people are at the centre. But, you know, if you bring in private capital in, or if the government's saying it wants to see a return, there's a dialogue that needs to go on between the parties. So it's not just one voice in the room. So what I'd be encouraging people to do is just become more familiar with the language, with examples, with anything you see on the social investment website that kind of points to you and gives you a sense of, oh, this is a little bit different than just going to ask the government for funding for a program, because it's definitely not that. I don't know if that's useful, but kia ora.
Oh, kia ora kōrero. I think I'd just like to tautoko what you said there in terms of, for me, the opportunity here is exactly what Julian was saying about, and also Atawhai about how are we influencing value from a community perspective, but also it's an opportunity for us to think about it from a te ao Māori perspective too. And those two dimensions are often lacking in the way that we measure value, particularly from a central government perspective. So for me, the opportunity here is what's the way that we can work alongside community and whānau, and from a te ao Māori perspective to understand how we might start to acknowledge and value those knowledge systems and those perspectives, and how we track that value or evidence it. So for me, that really speaks to the power dynamics of who gets to decide and how we evidence it. We'll move along to our second question, which is...
Ange, can I just add something to that? And maybe this is also drawing people's attention to the work of Julian and others. I would argue that over the last kind of 10 years, trying to evidence Māori views, values, and thoughts has become more and more common, yeah? At least in terms of whānau-centred views and perspectives. And what I also liked, Julian, if you don't mind me mentioning, you know, some of the work that you've done with Kataraina Pipi and Nanwehi Paihana, I think is kind of cutting edge. It's kind of world first in terms of trying to layer value within a kind of te ao Māori Indigenous lens. And I'd really encourage people to kind of check out Julian's website, and because people who know in the sector, people like Kataraina and Nanwehi Paihana know that they're kind of serious thinkers in this space. And I think, you know, what we've got to be doing, like you're saying, there, Angie, is we've got to try to bring all those concentric circles and try to find that spot in the middle. It's not going to be all of what te ao Māori says. It's not going to be all of what government says. It's not going to be all of what commercial says. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. There's a sweet spot. And I think that's what we've got to look for, because otherwise what we end up with is, you know, he say, she say, kuia, ko tātou, ko rātou. And really what we're going to find out is what's that thing in the middle. Because I think value ultimately has to be, the funder's going to look for value, the whānau are going to look for value, te ao Māori's going to look for value. If a commercial partner's in there, they're all going to be looking for value. And it is finding, in my perspective, what's that thing in the middle there where these things overlap. Because there's parts of value that the government wants that's not interesting, we're not interested in. There's parts of value that commercial want that we're not interested in. And there will be parts of value that whānau want that the Crown's not interested in. And I think it's, if I'm a pragmatist, you'll hear it from my perspective. It's that thing in the middle, I think, that we're all looking for together. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thanks, Atawhai. And I'll just point out that I've shared a couple of links in the chat just now. The first one is to my website. The second one is to a thing called Substack, which is just it's like a social media site for blogging. And so on both of those links, I'm sharing the approach that Atawhai was talking about, that including work with Kataraina Pipi, Nanwehi Paihana, Louise Ware, and others, where we are it's essentially it's combining the analysis that values things in dollars, right? The things that economists do, with all the other things that we do as evaluators, bringing in the other forms of evidence, the qualitative, the stories, and so on, and putting it all together so that we're getting a richer picture, and underpinning that with the actual values of people who are affected by our policies and programs. So it's not just evaluating things based on somebody in Wellington says. It's actually based on what matters to people who are affected by the program, and that can include, for example, Te Ao Māori-led value for money assessment. It looks quite different when you lead it through a Te Ao Māori lens instead of an economics lens. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kōrero. Let's move on along to the next question. How does an economic cost benefit analysis sit with a whānau-centred, we sort of just talked a little bit to this, with a whānau-centred view of value? What are the tensions that arise and how can these be reconciled? I'll go to Atawhai.
Actually, what I was going to say was, Angie, the work that I think Katarina and Nan and others did with Julian really tried to get to that. In terms of, let's be honest, economic lenses, I'm not going to say they're black and white, but they are fairly, they're quite technical. They monetize everything. But I think the real trick is how you bring different forms of value and voices into the room to kind of try to work through those tensions. So, I mean, I'm not passing the buck here, Julian, but I know that you've done this and you've had a crack. And I think it would be of really real value to people in the room to understand, number one, we're not starting on day one with this stuff. There are multiple people who've had a crack at this. And I think we've just got to keep on learning off the lessons we already have, lest people try to start from zero. So again, mate, I'm not trying to pass the buck, but the fact that you've had a crack at this, and I thought it was really awesome. Do you want to have a bit of a chat about that, mate?
Sure, thank you. Yeah. So just so we're all clear, when we talk about cost-benefit analysis, we're talking about a method that is principally that economists use, using a spreadsheet, measuring both costs and outcomes in dollars so that we can directly compare them. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold. I hope my voice holds for this, kōrero. So we want to directly compare the costs and benefits valued in dollars so that we can see if a program creates more value than it consumes. Have to use this air quotes, right? Creates more value than it consumes. It's not for me to say how that sits with a whānau-centred view of value, but there are some potential issues that come up that we can think about. And one of the big issues is that cost-benefit analysis, just by virtue of the fact that we're using a spreadsheet to measure things in dollars, it's privileging outcomes that are easy to count, easy to measure, easy to value in dollars. And yet we know from the community programs that we all work in, the most valuable outcomes are sometimes the hardest ones to value in dollars. So where does that leave us? So a nice easy example is thinking about something like a drug court, which aims to both reduce addiction and reduce crime rates. And you can count those things. You can count the deficit stuff, right? The social harms of addiction, social harms of crime, and measure the outcomes and see if the program reduces those social harms. And we might find that it saves money for health services, it saves money for police. But of course, that's only part of the value. And if we're counting, if we're privileging that stuff, then it can skew our decision-making to make us all think that's what's valuable. But what else is the program doing? Well, a drug court might also have a whole bunch of other benefits, like it might increase social connectedness, cultural identity among the people who are graduating from the program, people's connections with Te Ao Māori. It might be a mana enhancing program. And it's too hard to put dollar values on things like that. So a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis, kind of loses sight of those kinds of benefits. You might see them in a footnote or something in the report because people know they're there. They'll write a little apology saying, sorry, we couldn't monetize those things, but they're left out of the main analysis, which is the dollar figures in the spreadsheet. So a problem with monetizing benefits is that some of the most valuable outcomes can be the hardest to value in dollars. Actually, as a bit of a shortcut into this and something to read later, I wrote a think piece about this just really recently, and I'm going to pop it in the chat. ignore the bit in the title where it says in UK public services, because this applies, the same principles apply everywhere, and it's just pointing out this, it's not, CBA is not a bad method, it's a good method, we should be using it more, but the mistake that economists sometimes make is thinking it's the whole answer to the question. It's only a little bit of the answer. There's so much more that we have to do as well. So nobody said it would be easy, but if we just value things in dollars only, then we're going to miss a whole lot of really important stuff.
Hey, so Julian, I just want to jump in here because I think that's half of the story. So the other half is, so what do you do and what have you done with Nan and with Katarina and others to kind of make sure that the non-monetized stuff is counted, for lack of a better word? Because I think we all understand this. You can't measure everything in dollars, but what we do know, what you can do is you can find a way to count them by either stating them, not monetizing them, but also spotlighting them. So what did you guys do, mate?
Okay, thanks for keeping me on track. Yeah, look, I've developed an approach through my PhD to address those sorts of challenges. I call it value for investment. It's a deliberate attempt to shift the lens away from the money. If we say value for money, we start perceiving programs as costs. And we don't want to start with that. We want to actually say somebody's investing in this program, they see promise in it. Let's focus on that. Let's define what that promise is, and then we can evaluate that and see to what extent it's meeting its value proposition, right? So this came out of, I used to work as a health economist. I was doing all the spreadsheety stuff, and through that I could see that those are really useful methods, but they're not enough on their own. And so I wanted to bring in all the other good stuff that we do as evaluators. So while it's called value for investment, it also goes by the name Te Kaunga o Te Wera Wera, which is a name gifted by Kiri Mātau Paipai, our colleague, to signify that there's work underway, led by my Māori colleagues. It's not led by me, but it's led by Māori values and worldviews to explore what this approach looks like when we define that value proposition through a Mātauranga Māori, Te Ao Māori lens. What does that look like? What does that bring to the surface that's different from the assumptions that we would make if we gave the job to an economist, for example? And so that's the approach that I talk about on my website. To cut to the chase, what I recommend is, this is the straightforward answer, is anytime you need to demonstrate value, before you try to measure it, start by describing it. Like, just who is this policy or program or service valuable to? Who's it valuable to? In what ways is it valuable to them? Like, describe the value and think about what would enough value look like? What would great value look like? And once that conversation has been had, then it's the right time to figure out what kinds of evidence that you might need. And it might be dollars, it might be numbers, it might be qualitative evidence. Usually I find it's a mix of all three, or 2 out of 3. So it's never just the economic analysis on its own. Again,
Hey, Julian, just a question there. So I got to be careful here, because benefits means lots of things to lots of different people. But there is getting really clear. This is what I like about your suggestion. We think these programs benefit people, so we need to understand that. So people will say, oh, we do evaluation to find that out. I suppose my thinking is, Julian, if we're really clear about what we think those are, and evidence can be if we survey or do other things to ask people about the benefit it has to them, that's another form of value, isn't it, mate?
Absolutely, yeah. And so the starting point is to define that value, right? And then once we've defined it, we can then work out what are the appropriate ways to gather evidence to address that value. And it's as much as some people would like it all to be numbers, it just can't be. And that's something that I think as evaluators, we have a professional duty to push back on that and say, look, here's the numbers you wanted, but there's some other stuff you need to have that as well.
Could I just, sorry, Angie, one more.
Something else that's I've just written that kind of gets at these points too, in case anyone's interested. Sorry, Atawhai, back to you.
Just one more thing, Angie, and I was going to say, and sorry, I've got to be careful here. I'm not sticking up for money, but things cost money, so we should know what the benefit is. Yeah.
Agreed.
And nobody should have a problem with trying to work that out. So I think,
agreed,
because sometimes I have conversations with people and nobody wants to know that, because they go, oh, that's more important than this. I'm like, no. We do want to know that, but that's not all we want to know. I think that's what
we need
saying.
Both. Yeah.
And how do we do the end? I think that's what people are asking. I can't see the questions online, but I know when I go into conversations with people, it's either this versus that, and as opposed to what's the ends here we're trying to understand benefit value for people. So that's
Yeah.
all. Kia ora, Ange, sorry.
Oh, kia ora. I'm sure that the whānau online would love to listen to you fellas all day. And I've really enjoyed hearing from you both. But I think we are moving into some breakout groups so that our whānau online can have a little kōrero about what they've just heard from you both, which is awesome. So what I'm going to invite people to think about when we go into breakout rooms is there's two. What stood out from that conversation for you, and is there, as a group, is there a reflection that you'd like to share back with the wider group or a partai, another partai? There is an opportunity to share from your breakout groups afterwards, and I think there might be an opportunity to have a short kōrero or some reflections when you come back. Kia ora tātou. I'm sure you all had you had some great kōrero in your rōpū. I'm going to ask you to pop your reflections or your partai into the chat. And
we'll just let everyone reflect. Everyone reflect on that. Add it in the comments. If you've got anything that was really a good nugget in your kōrero, please drop it in the chat. We'll give you a minute to do that.
Recording in progress.
Just in the meantime, while people are doing that, if you've want to invite a group or individual to share a reflection or partai that they might want to share to Angie and I, or put forward to Atawhai or Julian. This is your time to shine. Ask the partai now. Kōrero, we've got clarity of the problem to be resolved at the outset helps a lot. Gaining and retaining a shared understanding of the problem to solve and the beneficiaries of the problem and resolution is critical. Tēnā koe, Kōrero. Yeah, Rachel. What if you don't get what is it? Here we go. What if you don't get to have the conversation about what value looks like? What if that is just handed down through the contracting environment?
Oh, I'm happy to respond to that one. Kia ora, Rach.
Julian.
Long time no see. Too long between coffees. It's good to see you. Look, I have this slightly cheeky thing I call the Trojan horse approach, where you give them what they want and give them what they need. So they can say, here's our definition of value. Speak to that, and we need to address that. So if that definition of value is a dollars thing, for example, we have to address that. You have to do the ROI, but we can also say, but that's not the whole story. We're missing some things here. You also need to know this and this and this, and we can give them that as well. So it's kind of it's not either or, it's both. Hope that helps.
That's the and story, mate. You know, it's all the time it's and, because the reality is there is a pushback from the centre let's just be honest, yeah, that they are wanting to dictate terms. And if you want to engage in the fight, kia kaha. But if you want to optimize the opportunities that are there, you're going to have to tell an and story. And those are choices you make and your organization makes. So kia kaha, but yeah, if you can tell that, give them what they want. I like what you said, Julian, give them what they want. So they've asked for certain things, and then you give them what they need. So you add to that, these are the things that are missing. This is what we think, rah, rah, rah. That's a good approach. Kia ora.
I think that's the opportunity here, is to draw on the existing Julian's work and the work of our Māori academics, and start to say what are the ways that we can be thinking about how we're describing, we're delivering what we're being asked for, and we're also developing capabilities and practices to be noticing what whānau are telling us matter, and we're trying different ways of capturing that and thinking about that at the same time. I think that's the opportunity there.
All right. What we'll do now is, Angie, if you're happy, we'll do the final part, well, no, not quite, the final partai. Kapai, so the final question that we have is, what is this one thing you'd like people to take from today's session into their mahi, into their work?
Who's going first? Atawhai?
You go, mate.
Okay. Can I have two things? Because I'd just like to tautoko just the comment that Sean Ackroyd's put in the chat. The use of logic models and rubric development, especially rubric development, will help to surface what's valued and by whom. And I really agree with that. That's a really important thing to include. And really, from me, the take home is the methods and the tools and the measures. They're not the value. The value is just how something matters to people. So start by describing the value in words, and then think about using a mix of methods to evidence that value, numbers and stories, not just dollars, everything. So it means we have to stand back from return on investment, think about all the evidence that we can use to tell a compelling value story. You still have to do the ROI, but don't stop there. There's more that we have to do as well. Kia ora, that's it from me.
Yeah, I want to back what Julian says. I think what matters, getting that in written form is the gold. And yeah, I like that. Give them what they want. They are asking for things in terms of numbers. We've got to do that, mate. You may not want to, but you got to do that. Find some help, and then give them what they need. The need will be, there'll be things that they may not be that interested in, but they're the things that we're interested in, or community's interested in, or whānau. And to tell that story in numbers and story is really, really critical. So just see this as a kind of further journey on in terms of, what we've been doing to date in the social sector to try to, be more than compliant, tell the story of whānau in terms of transformational change, or not, as the case may be, yeah, or not, because not everything does work. But have a go. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora kōrero. We're a bit ahead of time, so we're going to invite the whānau online to ask either Julian or Atawhai a question. So we'll just invite you to unmute or pop your hand up so we can see who's wanting to ask the question, and you can ask them directly to our Kaikōrero. Ka pai? Don't be shy, te whānau.
I think there's a partai from Amber. Theory of change, a more critical approach than logic models.
Sure, yeah, we're guilty sometimes of using those terms interchangeably, but yeah, theory of change arguably gives more detail than a logic model and unpacks assumptions and under what conditions we think something works and so on, and it kind of unpacks what's going on in the arrows between the boxes, if you like, and so I agree with the statement.
Kia ora. I think Mel might have a question, or I see a hand up. Is that right?
Kia ora. My question, I guess, was, do you have examples or resources where we could go to about how to better describe and use the words to, I guess, put those values out that don't have numbers?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question. I'm just going to pop, there's a link to Substack that I'm just popping there, and it's a series of blog posts. But some of the most recent ones, there's two that have the title of value propositions, and that's coming from a conference presentation that I gave with Adrian Field 2 weeks ago. So it's fresh off the press, and that's answering that exact question. So that's lucky. Can I just jump to, so Amber was asking, can you explain the difference between social value and, I guess, the social investment approach? Is it an SROI? Is that the question? Because I think that's an important one to. What's SVOI? Did you
Social value on investment. Have I got the right term? Social value on investment. I've seen that term used recently.
Okay, because I know in the UK they've started using this term social value, and I think they mean almost the same thing as social return on investment. I'm not entirely clear on that either. And then there's, of course, the New Zealand government's approach. The social investment approach is another one as well. So social return on investment is a method that was developed in the UK, and it's used worldwide, and it's a little bit like cost benefit analysis, in that it's looking to put dollar values on things. Whereas the social investment approach is the current government's way of, it's their signal that they want to make evidence-based decisions. And I think we're all trying to get a handle still on exactly what it looks like, but it's that.
Hey, Julian, I mean, isn't the other point too, there are some technical differences between methods that are about the method, yeah? And some of these things are owned, or there are organizations and institutions that are kind of, you know, the institutional organization for SROI. I know that Whānau Ora, what's your name? My cousin Awarangi, she's on one of those groups. And there are, you know, there are ways to do this. And I think the challenge that I don't understand, maybe you'll know better, Julian, but you know, there'll be approaches that are favored. There'll be approaches that aren't. I think one of the challenges I always thought, Julian, and your comment on this would be good. You know, there's the old objectivist approach to the world, the rationalist, you know, all these objective measures of value, and they don't involve people's voices. And then I've seen SROI models that actually include people making decisions about what value is and what the benefits are. So I think I just wanted to, there seems to be some kind of divide between how much of it is a spreadsheet and how much of it is a spreadsheet plus a story. Have you got any comments on that, mate?
Yeah, no, that's right. I think so the economist's way, doing a cost benefit analysis, that can be just a spreadsheet, and you can do it as a desktop exercise. People can email you their data, or you can you know, look through a database. You can do the whole thing by spreadsheet. So people's values are kind of, they're arguably there in the background, but nobody got asked, you know. Whereas I think one of the big gains of doing what they call a social return on investment, the spreadsheet part looks the same, but they're doing more. They're actually asking stakeholders what matters to them, and they're valuing that. And that's really, and the report is a mix of numbers and stories. So that makes, in that sense, social return on investment I see as an advance on cost benefit analysis. But it's trickier than that, because I still think the economists are better at their guidance for doing the numbers stuff well. SROI guidance is okay, but it's a little bit more light touch, and it's a little bit more open to, you know, you see some SROI reports that are really well done, and you see some others where they didn't get the basics right from an economic perspective. So I think the guidance needs to be a little bit more, needs to reference the economic stuff a bit more, in my opinion. So best of both worlds would be good.
We've got a couple of pātai in the chat. One is about rubrics. For those that aren't evaluators or educators, can you talk to why you believe rubrics are so useful in this space?
Absolutely. And again, just go to my Substack, because I've written all about it. But essentially, we can think of a rubric as a table where one side of the table is a list of the things that matter. They're our criteria, right? The aspects of performance that people agree matter. And then the other side of the table is a set of levels of performance that could be something like excellent, good, adequate, and poor, or it could be, you know, the seed, the shoot, the tree, and the flower. It could be anything like that, but it's giving us a sense of levels. And then we fill in the table with rich descriptions of what the evidence would look like at different levels of performance. And that evidence isn't just numbers, it's any evidence. It can be qualitative evidence too. It's giving us a set of different levels of performance. And the power of this is that it's not just a table describing what excellent and good would look like. It's actually a shared set of values because of the way it gets created. So it's there's a conversation with stakeholders that happens to get to the point that you've got that rubric. And that conversation about what matters is a powerful thing to, it's what makes an evaluation, in my opinion. Otherwise, we're just doing research, we're just measuring stuff and writing thematic analyses, but we don't have that basis for saying, we agree that this is what matters and this is what good would look like, and therefore this is what the evidence shows. We've got no basis to get to the so what if we haven't had that community conversation and built the rubric. Does that help, Angie?
That's great, thank you. I think we've got a question from one of the whānau online. Levi? Or Levi? Apologies.
No, kia ora tātou. I just want to pick your brain, Julian and Atawhai. I'm just wondering in what ways can social investment be used for support for iwi, for intergenerational transfer of knowledge and resources, if you've even thought about that, and to what capacity?
Atawhai, definitely one for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question there, mate. I mean, if I'm totally honest about what this is, it is an evaluation metric of sort that enables you to kind of work out, you know, where you're putting your investment, your money. So if you think, for example, that particular mātauranga Māori question you're asking is a particular thing, and you can describe that, then maybe it can help an iwi work out if it's going to invest in this thing or not. I think that's the only way, you know, in this context, what we're talking about now, it's kind of how I'm seeing it. I don't know if that's helpful, Levi, but, you know, that's kind of how I'm seeing this. And I think ultimately, this might be the shitty thing that people have to understand, but it's a real thing. I'm not clear that this government, no, I am clear actually. There'll be things that wants to continue funding the things that doesn't. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And there will be ways and means to go, actually, we're going to invest in these things because the language will be there's a better social return. Yeah. So it is a bit of a way of saying we like these things better than those. This metric helps us. It's a bit overly simplistic. I think we all know that, but it is the kind of tool. You know, when I think about when Bill English was talking about this early on, you know, it was that kind of thing that, you know, the Nats wanted to invest in things that had a better long-term payoff. I think somebody actually mentioned in there too, Julian, something about the long-term payoff, because that is another aspect of social investment we haven't really talked about. But sorry, Levi, I hope that's okay. Kapai?
Yeah, and I think that one of the risks with this approach is that if we go down a road of thinking that we have to be able to put metrics on everything, we have to have a number, then the things that are hardest to put the numbers on can be perceived as not valuable or not worth funding, or even we're just not able to fund it because we can't count something. And then it's a whole lot of really important stuff falls off the table, not because it isn't important, but because we can't measure it. And I think that's the big danger in this approach, and where, yes, we have to give people their metrics, but we have to also say that's not enough. As you know, you're asking us as professional evaluators what our view is. Our view is the metrics alone are not enough. We just have to push that, in my view.
Maybe this is good for me to say. I mean, that's why, you know, we talk about CBECs, cost benefit analysis, you know, traditional economic tools, which are numbers on a spreadsheet. Someone clever does them by themselves, finds numbers somewhere, and then the biggest hole, as you've said, Julian, is that all these real things that we really value aren't on there.
Yep.
So SRI, you know, what I like about SRI, it enables us to tell stories and have numbers. So I kind of think in a Māori context and in a community context, that whole kind of SRI thing it feels better to us.
Yeah.
But I think one other thing, mate, and somebody did the VFI thing, that's that value, was that value for investment? That's is that your baby, Julian?
Yeah, that's right. And that's you can think of that as it's not a competing method. It's not saying don't do a CBA or don't do an SROI. It's just saying here's a system to sit across the top to help you to define value in your context, to help define what good value for money looks like, and then choose what mix of methods is going to be right for you. And often what it might look like is social return on investment with a rubric, because it's got the numbers and it's got the stories and it's got the rubric to help pull the numbers and stories together. And recently I actually wrote a Substack blog titled SROI with a rubric, because that's really what we're trying to get to is then we've got the sense-making framework as well as the evidence.
I might add one thing. I can see Levi's hands up again. He's getting 2 bites of the cherry there, Levi. But before I go to this, mate, I did want to say, so when I did the Kupinga survey in 2013, which I call it Wharetapa 3.0, because really it's trying to build on the work that Uncle Mason and the Māori Women's Welfare League did way back in the late 80s, early 90s. But it's trying to understand what are the things that are important to Te Ao Māori, and can we measure those things in some way? The reality is you can measure people's valuing of those things. So I think, or people's practice of those things, and that's kind of what Te Kupinga does. I suppose my point is, you know, there's a lot of work that has been done. There's a modiometer, I forget his name. I should know it, that they used in Tarawa for the, what was that boat that sunk in Tauranga Moana there. So there's a number of tools that Māori have been exploring in terms of that measurement space. And while I know that there'll be people who don't like that, because they'll think, you know, Te Ao Māori shouldn't be measured, the good news is that there are Māori who are kaupapa Māori driven, fluent in Te Reo Māori, tikanga people who are having a crack at this. So I suppose my thing is, there'll be some aspects of this that won't suit us. That's just real. But I think the more and more we kind of use this to better voice the benefit and our people, you know, that's a good thing. And that's probably my optimism bias with all the stuff. I try to find what's the silver lining, what's the opportunity for our people and for our development. So, kia ora tātou. Levi, are you jumping on? Yeah, keep on more.
All right, I might as well. No, kapai, and because I just wanted to go back, so I just left listening to your kōrero. I think, you know, for social investment strategies, I think we need to maybe enhance that whole economic resilience and the preservation of Te Ao Māori and our iwi, our hapu, and our communities. So, yeah, I think I just answered my own bloody question. E hoa mā.
Kapai.
Kia ora, Levi. I think, Didi, is it about time to do a little bit of a wrap up and talk about the next sessions? Would you like to start with your reflections for the session?
I think you know, we've seen a huge change from all our other sessions to today, and we've got a lot of buy-in, a lot of kōrero that everyone's been given, and it's been, you know, it's just been non-stop and it's been beautiful. And so I just wanted to mention to our Kaikōrero, our manuhiri that have come today, this morning, to share your kōrero, to share all your whakautu for all the pātai that everyone has been asking on our chat forum. And it's just been, it's been really good to hear everyone's kōrero, and we're all sharing that whakaaro on what this all means for us in our own hapori and our own rohe. So e mihi ana kia koutou katoa. Kia koe, Ange?
Oh, kia ora, Didi. There's two things that I've reflected on for all of our kōrero. The first is that I think what I'm hearing strongly from Atawhai particularly is that this is about a balance of doing what we know we have to do and also evidencing what what matters to whānau and other worldviews. So it's a balance of all of those things. It's not a either or. That's the first thing. So it's all of those things working in combination. And the second thing I take away is just some of the really practical things we can start doing in our own work. And so I'll encourage you to look at the resources that Julian's popped in the chat, and there are other resources that you can look at. I think Atawhai was talking about Akina's resource. So have a look at those things, and for me it's just a really good tono about how we're utilising what we know as the tools and methodologies, and also building our own capability to start to describe value, or supporting whānau to describe value, and the ways that we can start to evidence that. So those are the two things I'll take away from today. Back to you, Riri, to close off.
Just some further, we've also got a SRY workshop that's happening in Auckland on the 16th to the 17th of October. I'll share that link to everyone shortly for those that would love to register and attend. Shared by one of our kaiwhakarongo. But yeah, so he whakakapia ki tēnei wahanga o tātou, mihi ka tika ana kia kaurua tahi Atawhai, Julian, i tā kaurua tuku kōrero mai i te ata nei. E kore a arekarika ngā kupure rehua kia kaurua tahi, nā runga anō i ngā mātauranga, ngā kōrero tuku iho, ko taka mai, ko patere mai i a tātou i te rangi nei. No reira, tēnei tēnei mātau e mihi nei ki a koutou, kia kaurua tahi. Tēnā koutou. So I just wanted to also share, so we've, if you remember correctly, that we mentioned this morning that we've got a illustrator that's been illustrating all the kōrero that's been captured today. And so we're going to ask Dylan, if you'd love to share that online now.
So here's what I've been up to as everyone's been talking. There's a bit more to do, and I'll go through the video and like the chat and pull in everyone's input for those the questions and the feedback. But yeah, that's where I'm up to, and hopefully you'll see it sometime soon in a slightly more refined version.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome.
Okay. Ngā mihi, Dylan. Awesome that you captured all the kōrero this morning. That's awesome. Just in case you'd like to get a hold or contact of our Kaikōrero, do add it in the chat, and Kelly will pass on the information on how you can best contact our Kaikōrero from this morning's session. Yeah, and so Kelly will add that on our post. I would now invite everyone to share feedback on the session, and what you liked and what was helpful, what was useful. If you can please put that in the chat, and we'll take that into consideration for us looking at further sessions. We've just got a pānui that we would also like to mention, that we've video and resources available on the website shortly, including the link. All the resources and links will be shared by Julian and his websites, and the illustration from the session. A subtract article Julian and Atawhai are co-authoring. But I also wanted to just mention just to everyone for giving all your time to listen in this morning on our session at Practice Foundations, knowing that this is our last one for the before the Tauhou Pākehā. So I just wanted to thank you all for your time and that you've shared this morning. Angie, would you like to say anything? No?
No, just a big thank you to our Kaikōrero today, and to the whānau for joining us today, and look forward to working together as we build out new ways of describing and evidencing value. Thanks, Riri. Thanks to the team, and thank you to Riri for holding our space today.
Fine. So if you're new to the Practice Foundations and would like to receive the email invites to the session, please sign up via the Co-Design Labs website or emailing the lab. And then all information will be shared out to you via the sign up. So e mihi ana ki a tātou, hei whakakapi ake I tā tātou wahanga, ka tuku pēr hei whakahihiri I tā tātou wahanga I tātou nei, tēnei o te mihi nei, kia karakia tātou. Kia whakairihia te tapu, kia wātea I te ara, kia turu ki whakatahai, whano, hara mai te toki, haumi e, hui e, tā ki e. Tēnā koutou, kia pai te rā.